Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss one of the most important documents in regulatory affairs, product information. Whether you're working in Australia, Europe, or the United States, every life-saving medicine has a regulatory approved document that communicates how it should be safely and effectively be used. My name is Simran. I'm a regulatory affairs professional with over 10 years of industry experience. And on this channel, I share practical insights into the regulatory requirement and global regulatory trends. So let's take a closer look at this. In Australia, we call it product information or simply PI. In Europe, it is called the Summary of Product Characteristics or SMPC. And in United States, it's known as the US Prescribing Information or USPI. Although the name differ, these documents serve the same purpose. They communicate the approved benefit risk profile of a medicine and provide healthcare professionals with the information needed to prescribe a treatment appropriately. These documents are not simply summaries written at the end of the submission. They are carefully constructed from the clinical, non-clinical, and quality evidences submitted to the regulators at the time of the application. Every indication, every warning, every dosage recommendation, and every adverse reaction statement should be supported by the evidence within the regulatory dossier. And today we will explore how the FDA, EMA, and TGA approach product information with an example and the key consideration for a regulatory professional when drafting or reviewing them. Now, the regulators may largely review the same clinical data, yet produce document that looks different. The FDA approach is heavily focused on usability. The USPI begin with a section called the highlights of the prescribing information. The objective is to allow clinicians to quickly identify the key indications, major risk, dosage information, and important changes without reading the entire document. The FDA's approach is very much centered on helping prescribers find critical information rapidly. The EMA takes a more scientific and structured approach through the SMPC. The document follows a standardized format harmonized across Europe using QRD, Quality Review Document Template. Rather than providing a summary section at the beginning, the EMA presents information in a highly structured manner and detailed sections within the SMPC. The emphasis is on scientific completeness and consistency. While the Australian PI document are broadly aligned with the European structure and contain similar sections, they are tailored to Australian regulatory requirement and terminologies as well. Let us now talk about the critical section in the product information, efficacy. When regulatory professionals draft efficacy section, they are not trying to reproduce the clinical study report. Instead, what they are trying to do is to communicate why the medicine was approved. The first place where efficacy appears is usually the indication. The indication is not simply a description of the disease. It is a regulatory statement defining the patient population for whom the benefit have been demonstrated. Every word matters. The indication should reflect the evidence generated in the pivotal studies and should not extend beyond the data supporting the approval. The next efficacy appears is within the clinical trials or clinical study section. This is where regulators expect a concise but meaningful summary of the evidence. Typically, this includes information about study design, patient population, treatment arm, primary endpoint, and clinical outcomes. Not every analysis performed during development belong in the PI. Regulators generally expect the focus to remain on the clinically meaningful outcomes that support prescribing decisions. Let us now consider a real-world example, nivolumab, marketed as Opdivo. Nivolumab is a monoclonal antibody and immune checkpoint inhibitor used across multiple oncology indications. And if you compare the approved labeling across 3 regulators, you'll find the efficacy evidence is highly consistent. The approved indications are supported by pivotal clinical trials demonstrating clinically meaningful improvements in endpoints such as overall survival, progression-free survival, and objective response rate, depending on the indication and study design. However, the presentation differs. The FDA places efficacy information in the clinical study section, while the EMA presents efficacy in the pharmacological property section, 5.1 of the SMPC, and the TGA includes similar information within the clinical trial section of the PI. Let's now move to the safety, which is often the most challenging aspect of the PI development. When drafting safety section, the objective is not to simply list adverse events. The objective is to communicate the risk in a way that supports safe clinical use. Not every adverse event belongs in the warning. Not every risk belongs in the contraindication. Regulators expect safety information to be organized according to their clinical significance. The contraindication section is generally reserved for the situation where the medicine should not be used because the risks outweigh any potential benefits. The warning and precaution section focuses on the clinically important risks that require awareness, monitoring, or intervention. The adverse effects section provides a broader description of the observed adverse reactions and their frequencies. Again, nivolumab provides a useful example because it stimulates the immune activity and it can cause immune-mediated adverse reaction affecting the organs such as lungs, liver, GI tract, etc. Across all three jurisdictions, these risks are prominently discussed. While all three regulators communicate important safety risks, the FDA uses a formal box warning framework when warranted. The EMA highlights significant risks through the structure of the SMPC in safety-related sections, as it does not employ a formal boxed warning, whereas the TGA may use box warning and other safety-related sections depending on the nature of the risk. One of the most valuable questions to ask when drafting safety section is, will this information change how healthcare professionals prescribe, monitor, or manage treatment? If the answer is yes, it likely deserves a prominence within the product information. So I'm going to leave you with these three lessons from comparing today's regulatory approaches. First, all three regulators expect product information to be evidence-based and directly supported by the submitted dossier. Second, all three regulators communicate the same fundamental concept: indication, dosing, efficacy, safety, and benefit risk. Third, the biggest difference are not necessarily scientific. There are differences in communication style and regulatory philosophies. The FDA prioritizes rapid access to critical information. The EMA prioritizes the scientific completeness and standardization. The TGA adopts the structure closely aligned with the Europe while addressing Australian requirements. And if you found this useful, like and subscribe and drop a comment below. What other differences have you seen in the way regulators approach medicine product information? And I will see you next time.